Welcome back. It's time now to take a look at the top business stories. Abu Dhabi's economy forecast to grow 4.5% this year. Wataniya IPO oversubscribed 7 times. And India raises rates more than expected to rein in inflation. Let's look at the equity markets first. The UAE bourses both moved slightly, the DFM up and the ADX down. The DFM General Index was up 0.1% and closed at 1,629 points. Only sector to buck the trend and fall was the finance and banking sector. Top loser was jewellery maker Damas, which fell 12.3%. DP World was down 0.2% and stock market operator Dubai Financial Market fell 0.7%. Emaar Properties, on the other hand, was up 0.6%, Emirates NBD gained 0.2%, and Shua Capital climbed 1.7%. 73 million shares were traded, valued at 89 million dirhams. And over in the capital, the ADX General Index fell 0.1% to close at 2,689 points. Like in Dubai, the investment and financial services sector lost the most. Abu Dhabi Commercial Bank lost 1.1%, Abu Dhabi Islamic Bank was down 0.6%, and National Bank of Abu Dhabi fell by 0.4%. The property sector, on the other hand, was up. Alder Properties rose 1.9%, while Sur Real Estate gained 0.7%. 92 million shares were traded, valued at 156 million dirhams. And let's now take a look at the GCC equity markets. The country's main benchmarks ended lower today. News circling the US economy, the largest in the world, have once more rumbled the market last week. The US GDP grew only a lackluster 1.8% in the first quarter, after 3.1% in Q4. To talk about this issue further, we are now joined by Timothy Fox, Chief Economist at Emirates NBD. Hi, Tim.
Hello.
Good to have you here today. Now, is the US economy, is that just a short-lived trend, or will we see a very lackluster recovery for the rest of the year?
Well, I think at Emirates NBD we think that growth will be better than it was in the first quarter for the whole of the year. We're anticipating growth of around 3% for 2011. And our sense is that Q1 was probably distorted by a few factors. In particular, government spending was very weak, especially on the defence sector. And I think as time goes by, that will probably reverse. And I think the underlying trends in the US economy are still generally quite favourable. So as the year develops, I think we'll see stronger growth in Q2. And as I said, for the whole of the year, growth of around 3%.
What's not so favourable is the inflation in the in the US, which is spiking. But the Fed stays put. It is flushing the money markets with extra liquidity. When do you think will the Fed turn around its monetary policy?
Well, I think inflation is rising, but it's only so far quite gentle, especially in terms of core inflation, excluding volatile components like food and energy. It's still only around 1.2%, but it is a concern to the Federal Reserve, and I think they will react when they start to see, or if they start to see, higher food prices starting to impact in second-round effects on that underlying core inflation reading. But as things stand currently, I think the Fed has indicated it will continue to maintain and complete its course of quantitative easing in June of this year. And as far as interest rates are concerned, we don't think there'll be any shift in official policy interest rates until early 2012 at the earliest. So I think we've still got quite a long time to go before the Fed will reverse course on interest rates and begin normalising monetary policy away from the zero rate policy that currently exists.
Speaking of monetary policy, the ECB is holding its monetary policy meeting this week. What are you expecting, looking at the divergence between countries like Germany and then countries like Greece and Spain?
Well, I think the ECB is charged with delivering inflation primarily for the whole of the Eurozone. This is the point that President Trichet has made clear on a number of occasions. Inflation in the Eurozone as a whole rose to 2.8% in the latest month. And I think that's certainly a deviation away from the 2% target, which the ECB will be uncomfortable with. So I suspect that the ECB will continue to indicate that the issues of the periphery of Greece, Spain, Portugal, Ireland are for politicians to deal with in terms of those structural issues. The ECB will get on with focusing on the inflation rate for the whole of the Eurozone. We don't think there'll be a rise in interest rates at the upcoming meeting this week. But I think he will be setting out his stall for a further potential interest rate hike in perhaps June or July.
So we'll listen to Trichet's wording very closely. Thanks for coming in. See you in 2 weeks. And now to our top stories. Abu Dhabi's economy is expected to grow 4.5% this year, while inflation in the Emirate will remain at around 3%, a government official said. Abu Dhabi's plans to increase its economic output by an average 7% a year until 2015, with many sectors driving growth, such as industry, tourism, but mostly the oil and gas sector. The Emirate is the world's third largest oil exporter. It accounts for more than 60% of the UAE's total GDP. Meanwhile, Mohammed Omar Abdullah, the Undersecretary at Abu Dhabi's Department of Economic Development, said he expects the rise in consumer prices to hold steady at around 3% this year. Inflation is controllable, he said, and that the capital has a mechanism to deal with the situation. The IPO of National Takaful Company, also known as Wataniya, was 7 times oversubscribed. The strong demand is seen as a positive step towards the revival of the UAE's IPO market. The initial public offering opened on the 18th of April and closed on the 1st of May, during which applications for 590 million shares were received for the only 82.5 million shares available. The shares will be listed on the ADX. Around 20 million shares of the total share capital were open only to UAE nationals, while the remaining 62 million shares were also made available to GCC and other international investors. According to Arif Ismail Al-Khoury, the chairman of the Wataniya Founders Committee, the strong response represents investors' confidence in the future of Sharia-compliant insurance in the UAE. Wataniya is the second company after Insurance House to tap the equity markets this year in the UAE. And in our fast financial news, Dana Gas has announced its latest gas discovery of the South Abu El Naga 2 well in the Nile Delta in Egypt. It is the first discovery for the Sharjah-based energy company this year. The field may hold more than 60 billion cubic feet of gas reserves, Dana Gas said in a statement today. It will now prepare a development plan for the hydrocarbon pool. Banks must play a key role in boosting the UAE's real estate sector through more attractive home loans. That's according to the country's biggest bank, Emirates NBD. According to a local paper, a spokesperson from the bank said that it was time for banks to take advantage of the huge growth potential in home financing to help re-energize the sector. The UAE has signed an Open Skies Air Service Memorandum of Understanding with Uruguay. The agreement was signed by Saif Mohammed Al-Sulvaidi, Director General of the UAE's General Civil Aviation Authority, and Colonel Jorge Alvarez, Director General of Civil Aviation for Uruguay. The officials agreed that both parties will have the right to perform scheduled air services. And after the break, we will run you through what's making the headlines in international business today.